you. So if you have a question for either Dusty or Dari, raise your hand.
So both you guys, 3 years in waiting to get to the SEC football. Everybody's looking at the next sport. 60 days away from the open for Oklahoma. How do you think they're ready for the? Are they ready for that first?
You take it.
Well, look, I think that, year 3, Brent Venables, you look at the recruiting rankings, I think they're in a good spot. I think the longer he's here, the better they're going to get. I love the way he's built the defense. I think the defense has a chance to be much improved. All 3 levels, you got legit dudes. I'm excited about the wide receiver core. I'm excited about the young, talented quarterback. Look, the schedule is daunting. Let's be honest. I mean, it is a tough schedule, and there are no off weeks. You're going to have to bring it every single week. So, look, I think that Oklahoma's in a good spot. And, 10 wins a year ago, and the fact that the 2 games you lose by possessions late, I think that you saw a huge jump in year 2, and I think the program, as reflected by the extension Coach Venables just received, is in a really good spot. But there's no doubt you're taking a jump up in competition, but from my perspective, everything is trending in the right direction. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to see exactly where Oklahoma's at. The litmus test will be interesting, especially that first game against Tennessee, because best believe Josh Heupel is going to bring his team in ready to roll, and I think everybody's going to get an idea just how ready Oklahoma is. And I think it's interesting because both those teams are very similar. Talented defenses, young quarterbacks, and I think very similar expectations and are probably ranked in a similar spot. So personally, I'm optimistic. I think that Oklahoma is in a good spot, but they're swimming with sharks now. So we're going to see exactly where they're at.
Yeah, I agree in terms of, personnel. It's the grind. I mean, it is the grind. And programs in the Big 12 don't have the grind that programs in the SEC have. You get through 1 week, you don't really get to exhale because the next team on your schedule is just as talented as the team that you just played or close, and every bit as talented as you or close. Depth is enormous. Attrition is natural. It's going to happen. And, you look at the last 3 games of their schedule, at Missouri, home against Alabama, and at LSU, you got to play 5 conference games before that. And you hope that you're in a position to have those games really be impactful, meaningful when it comes to getting to the 12-team playoff. You hope you're healthy. It's a different beast. It's closest thing there is to the NFL, where you just feel like you don't get a week off. And that's going to be the challenge. And it might take a year, it might take 2 years to kind of get used to that and continue to build the depth needed. But they're in a really good place, I think, roster-wise, to his point, for year 1.
Dari, being an OU grad, I've got to believe you're pretty excited about Oklahoma joining the league.
Yeah, very much so. It's funny. When the news kind of started to break, I remember texting Greg Sankey and I said, "Tell me this is real. Like, tell me this is real." And it is, and it was, and it is. And I just keep thinking to myself, imagine if we still had to wait another year, like was the original plan. I mean, here we are celebrating this entry, and thank goodness it's here now. But yeah, no, this is kind of a mix of, for 10 years I've covered the SEC and have loved every minute of them and grown to appreciate the conference as though I grew up in it, although I grew up in the Big 8 and the Big 12. But to get to call and cover a conference that I've grown to love with a program that I've always loved, yeah, it's pretty special.
This first year, 8 conference games. Central State 8, 9 conference games. You think? I mean, and the reason I ask this is because with the 20 to 25 million is going to take to pay players. You're going to want 4 conference games, another home game. Does that enter into it? What do you think they end up doing?
Well, we know, at least for the first 2 years, it's going to stay at 8, right? Because they're just going to mirror these schedules, I think, and just flip them home and home. So that's already been announced. But, I mean, personally, I'd like to see them go to 9. I think Dari's exactly right. The grind is going to be very, very taxing. You add another, conference game on top of that, it makes it that much more difficult. But having said that, I love competitive football. And that would just give you that much more competitive football. And everybody's looking for ways to grow revenue. That I would have to imagine that's a pretty good way to grow revenue if you throw out an additional game across the board in the conference. So I have no idea. I do think that the SEC has the best leader in all of college athletics in Greg Sankey. So he's playing chess. Well, it seems like a lot of people are playing checkers. I have no idea what Commissioner Sankey has in his mind, but if you're asking me my opinion, I think it makes a lot of sense to go to 9 games. I hope they go to 9 games, but I have no clue if that's the plan.
Yeah, I would just chime in. I do believe more people than don't, even in the league office, wish. From any conversations I've had, I think 9 is the goal, but there's a lot probably in negotiations that I am completely not privy to that it will take to get there. Because you throw another week of SEC football in, and there's going to be a revenue situation there that's going to have to be figured out and sorted out. I do know, like in any conference, you're going to have some that are opposed to playing an extra game and some that favor it. And I think in a 12-team playoff situation, I think the one concern is why would you want to risk another loss for teams that are on the bubble? But the flip side is why wouldn't you want to give teams that extra opportunity to get to the right side of the bubble with a big win? And it's every other conference I think is doing 9, right? Every single one of them I believe is doing 9 at this point.
I think the ACC is still at 8.
Are they? Yeah. So ultimately, my hunch is that we'll get there.
I'm playing devil's
But
advocate.
yeah.
I guess if you play 8, I'm for 9 too, but if you play 8, then you get 4 non-conference games,
Yeah.
presumably another home game. As long as you're not playing another Power 5 team that's going to want home and home.
Yeah.
You need money to pay the athletes. So I guess I'm just.
Yeah, I mean, the realistically, I think the home gate is rather minuscule compared to the television contract. Right. The big money comes from the TV networks, and the home gate is nice, but I don't know that 9 would be turned down because people want that extra home game against an inferior opponent. Be my hunch.
Hey, they got, go ahead, I'm sorry.
You guys have both been around this fan base a lot, and I think we always get caught up in this OU SEC ready on the field, and then that's what a lot of the talk's about. But is this fan base, do you guys think, ready? How do they fit into the culture of the SEC? And Dari, for you, you've been around all these fan bases a lot. What's maybe your biggest piece of advice to fans as they enter the SEC?
Go ahead.
I think they fit in perfectly. The fan bases in this league, the whole "it just means more" thing. It has to do with every win means a little more to the fan, to the household, to the conversations, to the work conversations, to how much they sleep at night. Every loss pains them a little bit more than it does most teams around the country and conferences around the country. That's the fan base. Those are the fan bases here, 14 wide. And I think OU and Texas, for that matter, both, the fan bases are exactly the same, right? We know how much Sooner sports means to Sooner fans, which is the vast majority of this state and much of other states. And losses hurt and wins mean something, whether it's your conversations with your coworkers or your family members or, again, how well you sleep at night. And these fan bases are all the same. It fits perfectly. I mean, geographically, in an era where geography doesn't seem to matter in conference realignment, it's perfect too. But I also think that geography plays a part because the people are very similar. The people that live in these states are very similar to the people that live in the states in the South in terms of what they value, in terms of sports importance, and in terms of their collegiate program of choice. So from a fan base perspective, it's perfect. Advice, I think Sooner fans specifically don't count on and assume 11-1 is what's going to happen every year. That is be realistic. It's not going to be automatic. It's not every year is not going to be the dream that we've seen for 20 years for the vast majority of those, and it's a different beast. But prepare yourself to enjoy the ride and not just the result, because the ride in this league is really damn fun.
I'll just add to that briefly because I totally agree. I think that that's one of the things I love most about this move is for the fans, because I think that like-minded thinking, very similar when I go across the country and I do games in SEC country, it's just like Norman, Oklahoma. These fans live and die with every game, every recruit, and they're fans because they're fanatical and they're rabid and they're what make college football great. And I think that the venues that SEC teams will get to come see here in Norman, Oklahoma, and that now OU fans will get to go out and see across the SEC, I think that's exciting. And I think that that's one of the huge bonuses and one of the big selling points for, Joe Castiglione, I'm sure Chris Del Conte for this league. I think this, 9-3 is okay. And that's going to be hard because anything short of 10 wins for an Oklahoma fan is a bad year. That is a bad year. And even sometimes 10-2 is a bad year, right? And like this year, this schedule, if they go 9-3 this year, to me, I'd be feeling really good if I'm an Oklahoma fan. And that's going to be hard because I don't know if there's ever been a time in this illustrious history with 50 conference championships where you would say a 9-win season's a really good year. But a 9-win season could mean you're a top 8, top 10 team, just given the gauntlet you're going to see year in, year out. And that is, I'm as intrigued as anybody to see how an Oklahoma fan adapts to that because it's foreign to them, and that's going to probably take a little getting used to.
Dari, you're familiar with that Southeastern Conference, so this is for you in other sports. This isn't a football only deal.
Yeah.
And Oklahoma's got, as you know, probably 5 or 6 programs that, whether it's softball, men's golf, gymnastics, whatever, there's probably those that are ready to rock and fire.
Yeah.
But including them and all of the other sports aside from football, where do you think OU is in that regard?
I think that obviously the ones you mentioned, they're ready to go in and compete and win championships right away. I think basketball on the men's side certainly has work to do. They had work to do in the Big 12. They're going to have work to do in the SEC. That's not a program that you're going to look at and see people picking overly high, I think, in the league. Baseball, what Skip has done here has been fantastic. And my thing, Dean, when I look at baseball is they're going to go to these venues. Baseball and softball in the SEC are just massively important, right? And so they're going to go to these venues and they're going to see 16,000 in Starkville and 10,000 in Fayetteville and Oxford and sellouts in South Carolina and A&M and all of these places. And my hope is that they come back home and see packed houses, not as big a stadium, I get it, with Eldell, but packed houses, rabid fans, and they get to enjoy a home atmosphere like they're going to see on the road. And I think that that's going to be critically important for their level of success because the talent in the Big 12 is good, but the talent in the SEC is great. I mean, we just had half the field in Omaha once again, and that's not unusual. So my eyes are really like I think gymnastics and softball, they're going to be ready to rock and roll. I think women's basketball is really good and what Jenny's done there because, outside of LSU and South Carolina, there are programs that are on the rise. But I think Oklahoma slides right in there in that tier 2, and I think that'll be fun to see how they fare as well.
Hi, this is going to be for both of you guys. So what would you say has been the response in Norman to OU moving to the SEC? And also, what do the other teams in the conference feel about OU joining?
Well, in Norman, I would say not just Norman, but the entire state fired up. I mean, everyone I talked to excited, chomping at the bit. That's been the response from all the Oklahoma fans that I know. I mean, everybody's just really looking forward to what the future holds. So I haven't heard, even just today, my phone's been, I don't know about you, Dari, my phone's been blowing up. Everybody's just riding this high, I think, right now, and feeling like, again, they're heading to a place that you're going to see more and more competitive high-level football. I think there's a hope that, as you level up into this conference, it's going to help Oklahoma football. So the reaction I've gotten has been unbelievably positive. I do a morning radio show on Sirius XM, and we don't take a ton of calls. When we do, they're from all over SEC country. And I think that SEC fans are excited for Oklahoma. I do kind of wonder if they know exactly what they're getting I think that it seems sometimes like Texas is the prize and Oklahoma is just kind of somewhat of a throw-in. I don't know if they fully appreciate or understand the tradition of this place, and not just the 50s, the 70s, but recent tradition. I mean, the Big 12, 28 years, 14 Big 12 championships. As great as Texas is, and they're the toast of the town right now, Oklahoma's beat them 7 out of 10, 11 out of 15. So, everyone always asks the question, is Oklahoma ready for the SEC? And we're going to find out. But I do think that, I was mentioning this to Dari earlier, I do think there's an element that I do kind of wonder, does the SEC really know exactly what they're getting with the University of Oklahoma? And I think I think SEC fans included are excited and about to find out.
I'd agree. SEC fans are unbelievably knowledgeable and passionate sports fans, particularly college football, but really every sport matters to them. They understand the OU tradition, I think. They understand the OU brand. I think what excites them the most is honestly getting OU and Texas together, bringing that rivalry, which I think they all acknowledge is one of the best. They'll tell you that in their estimation, the Iron Bowl's the best, and Georgia Florida's great, and Egg Bowl's great. I don't know that they know enough and appreciate OU Texas enough, but they will. And I think they're excited to have them coming together. But I make no mistake, I feel like the SEC understand, most of the fan bases in the SEC understand the brand, understand the history, understand most of the traditions. And, the fact that for the last 25 years this program has won way more games than it's lost and more championships than it hasn't on a conference level, they get that. They see that.
Time for one last question.
Does from a recruiting perspective, it seems like this staff is kind of starting to catch its stride. What has kind of jumped out to you the most about how they've recruited? Maybe not who they've recruited, but the type of players they've recruited and how that's kind of changed.
Defense, for me. I think they're getting legit guys that you see in the SEC, and that's and look, Coach Venables, he knows, right? I mean, at Clemson, he won 2 national championships against SEC teams. I mean, he knows what it's going to take to step in that lead. He knew the day he took the job what he needed to do, and I think that's first and foremost. I mean, Oklahoma's done a nice job on offense too, but I think the biggest difference I've seen is their ability to get defensive players that are game changers, because I know we live in an offensive world, and we're going to talk about Jackson Arnold. We're going to talk about all these great quarterbacks and these offenses. But you look at teams that win the SEC, you look at teams that win national championships, they have great defenses. And Oklahoma, when Oklahoma was on top of college football, they played really good defense. And I think that the way Coach Venables has recruited the defensive side of the football tells me that they're back on their way to competing at a high level. So I would say that side of the football, length, athleticism, and I think difference makers along the front seven, which is something that, just not that it wasn't prioritized, they just weren't able to do it. And so for this staff, you can tell it's been a priority. And I think they've done a great job with in the NIL space. I think that, everything has started to come together, and with somebody who's respected and known as one of the best defensive minds in the country, I think that you're seeing a lot of the top defensive talent want to come play for him.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you all.